Sacagawea's life begins with a paradox that feels too large for a young girl's shoulders because she grows up surrounded by vast landscapes that promise belonging while quietly preparing her for a future where belonging will often be taken away. Even as a child, her sensitivity to sounds, weather, and shifting ground creates an awareness that the world is always speaking, though it rarely explains itself clearly or kindly. She learns early that safety can be temporary, and that memory sometimes becomes the only place where home continues to exist without interruption. While others move confidently within familiar boundaries, she watches from the edges, absorbing patterns and relationships rather than claiming space outright. This habit of quiet observation forms not from weakness, but from an instinct to survive by understanding before acting. Her youth unfolds not as a straight path, but as a series of emotional crossings, where languages change, customs collide, and identity feels increasingly layered rather than singular. She senses that names, like rivers, can shift meaning depending on who speaks them and why. In moments of stillness, she notices how adults speak past one another, missing obvious connections that she quietly assembles in her mind. Humor enters her thoughts gently, often in the form of private irony, as she recognizes how confident voices frequently know less than patient silence. Loss arrives without ceremony, altering her inner world long before her outer circumstances fully reveal their consequences. She carries this loss carefully, not dramatizing it, but letting it sharpen her attention to emotional undercurrents around her. As she grows, her sensitivity becomes a tool, allowing her to read moods and intentions where others rely only on words. Being carried between cultures teaches her that translation involves far more than language, because meaning lives in gesture, pause, and shared experience. She begins to feel that she belongs nowhere completely, yet understands many places deeply. This in-between existence creates an inner conflict because it offers understanding while denying simple comfort. When surrounded by people who assume authority through volume or certainty, she remains reserved, noticing how assumptions often hide fear. Her imagination becomes a refuge, quietly weaving together fragments of memory into internal landscapes she can revisit when reality feels unstable. Even during communal gatherings, she often stands slightly apart, listening more than speaking, sensing how power moves subtly through conversations. The world teaches her patience not as a virtue, but as a necessity. She learns that survival frequently depends on timing rather than strength. Her youth is marked by adaptability, as she adjusts without fully surrendering her sense of self. Small moments leave deep impressions, such as the way hands exchange objects, or how eyes avoid certain truths. She notices how strangers evaluate one another quickly, while trust takes longer and demands proof. Despite uncertainty, curiosity remains alive within her, preventing bitterness from taking root. She wonders how different lives might intersect without colliding, and whether understanding can exist without ownership. Questions accumulate quietly, shaping her internal compass. She grows aware that being underestimated grants a strange freedom, allowing her to move unnoticed through critical moments. This awareness does not harden her, but refines her perception. She begins recognizing that resilience can appear gentle, even invisible. Her inner voice strengthens as her external voice remains measured. She observes how stories are told by those in power, often trimming complexity for comfort. Such observations create a subtle tension because she senses truths that remain unspoken. Yet she does not rush to correct the world, understanding that timing matters. Her emotional landscape becomes rich, layered with memory, alertness, and restrained hope. She develops a calm presence that others later mistake for simplicity. Inside, however, thought moves constantly, mapping connections between people, places, and intentions. Even joy carries a reflective tone, shaped by awareness of its fragility. Her youth does not aim toward legend, but toward comprehension. She understands more than she reveals. Her silence holds intention, her adaptability hides depth. Her presence begins to matter quietly, the path ahead remains unseen. The tension between belonging and movement persists. Her inner world steadies, the story waits. As circumstances begin to tighten around her, responsibility enters quietly, not announced as destiny, but felt as a steady pressure that asks her to be present even when the world grows unpredictable and uneven. She moves forward without illusions, aware that uncertainty is not a passing phase, but a condition that must be navigated with attention, restraint, and a willingness to read meaning from incomplete information. Around her, decisions made by louder voices create ripples she must interpret, because outcomes often depend on details no one else pauses long enough to notice. Her calm becomes a stabilizing force, not because she seeks control, but because she understands how fear spreads when left unchecked. She notices how trust forms gradually through consistency, while confidence can vanish in a single careless moment. In groups, she senses shifting balances, recognizing when silence needs to hold and when a carefully chosen word can redirect misunderstanding before it hardens. The tension within her deepens as she balances personal memory against collective goals that rarely consider individual cost. She does not romanticize hardship, yet she accepts it without complaint, understanding that endurance often speaks louder than protest. Her observations sharpen further, capturing not just landscapes and routes, but emotional terrain, where alliances, doubts, and expectations overlap unpredictably. What others call intuition, she experiences as accumulated attention, refined through years of listening rather than asserting. Moments of humor still surface gently, often internal, when she notices how those claiming mastery rely quietly on guidance they barely acknowledge. She remains aware of how visibility can be dangerous, choosing steadiness over spectacle. Her presence begins to influence outcomes subtly, shaping direction without demanding recognition. In critical moments, her composure helps steady others who struggle beneath the weight of unfamiliar choices. She understands that leadership does not always stand at the front, and that guidance can exist beside movement rather than above it. Her inner voice grows firmer, not louder, anchored by experience rather than ambition. She continues adapting, not losing herself, but integrating each demand into a broader sense of purpose. The world around her feels larger now, yet more connected, as patterns she once noticed privately begin aligning in practical ways. She senses how fragile success can be, aware that progress often depends on fragile cooperation. Even when outcomes appear uncertain, she contributes steadiness rather than certainty. Her understanding of people deepens alongside her understanding of place. She recognizes fear as a language spoken fluently by many, often mistaken for authority. By acknowledging it without feeding it, she helps keep motion possible. Her role expands organically, shaped by necessity rather than announcement. She accepts this expansion quietly, without imagining legacy or reward. Memory remains active, reminding her of losses that once seemed defining, now functioning as sources of perspective. She notices how survival changes people differently, revealing character rather than transforming it completely. Through it all, her sensitivity remains intact, neither hardened nor erased. She continues listening first, acting second, trusting sequence as much as intention. Her inner conflict persists, though it no longer destabilizes her. The longing still feels conditional, yet purpose feels increasingly clear. She navigates between expectations without fully inhabiting any single one. Her strength appears in continuity, showing up consistently when conditions demand clarity. Others may overlook her influence, yet outcomes quietly reflect her presence. She understands that some journeys shape history not through speeches, but through alignment. As movement continues, she remains attentive to both direction and consequence. Her awareness holds the group together more effectively than command. She carries forward, not seeking resolution, but sustaining momentum. The horizon feels closer now, though uncertainty remains intact. She does not rush toward closure, she trusts unfolding more than arrival. Her role stabilizes, her understanding deepens. The tension sharpens, the path narrows, the moment approaches.